Portal 2 maps? Then this is the tutorial series for you. Hi, I'm Stanley, and I'm a person. Step 1. Buy Portal 2, you dumbass. Step 2. Install the Portal 2 authoring tools. You can do this by heading onto Steam and ticking the box labelled Tools in the game's drop-down list. Scroll down and you should see Portal 2 authoring tools. Now it will say it's a beta, and that's a complete lie. This thing hasn't been updated in like 10 years. This is just Valve's way of trying to say that it's a complete buggy mess. But don't worry, just hit install and run through the installation wizard. Also, I forgot to mention that this will work on Windows only, so if you're on a Mac, more like crack, which is what you take every day because you use Mac. It doesn't work on Linux either, but Linux is cool, so yeah. If you're on either of these operating systems, then you can just go ahead and use the default level editor that comes with Portal 2 by default. It's okay. It's not as good as the Source engine, but it gets the job done, I guess. Step 3. Get a hammer and go... And congratulations, you made your first Portal 2 map. Okay, that was a joke. What you actually have to do is click on Hammer World Editor. Now, you should get a screen that looks exactly like this. If everything looks like it's from Windows 95, that's because it is. The Portal 2 authoring tools runs on the Source engine, which itself is a heavily modified version of the Quake engine, which came out a long time ago. So yeah, this is some antique shit right here. Click File, New, and you should get a window with 4 viewports and many other buttons displayed. Now, if everything looks daunting to you at first, don't worry, because you won't be using around 95% of what you see here in this first tutorial. Step 4. Configure Hammer. Now, this step is optional, but since this is a fresh installation of Hammer, I'm going to change some of the default settings to better suit my needs. I do recommend you do this as well, as you'll have the exact same layout as me and you won't get confused later on. Perfect. Now you should have the exact same layout as me. All I'm going to do now is press Ctrl A on my keyboard to center the 4 viewports. Step 5. Create a room. But before we do so, however, we need to understand the different viewports. This is the main 3D viewport, and the remaining 3 are the different 2D grid views. The top, the front, and the side. The 2D grid views are where you create the geometry of a level, and the 3D viewport is where you view the actual level. Now you know how the different views work, let's start off by selecting the block tool on the left hand side and dragging out a square in the top 2D grid view. Resize it to the desired height in the front or side view and press enter. To view our level so far, hover your mouse over the 3D viewport and press Z. Please note that I say Z instead of Z because I am British, and if you don't like that then you can f*** off. Anyway, if you press Z, you should now be able to look around with the mouse and move around with WASD, a bit like a first-person game. Now, so far our level is just a bunch of lines connected to each other, so to change this, click on Camera and then click on Textured. You should now see a texture that Hammer gives us by default. To change the default texture, head over to the right hand side of the screen and hit Browse. You should now see a window with hundreds of different textures to choose from. In the filter box, type in wall and find a nice wall texture. I'm going to choose this one. To apply it to a level, click on the selection tool, click on the level, and then press apply current texture. This will replace the old texture of our level with the new one. Now, currently our level is just a block, not a room. So to change this, click on the block with the selection tool, click on tools, and then make hollow. This value doesn't really matter, but I'm actually going to change it to -64 to hollow outwards. Press enter, and congratulations, you made your first room. Step 6. Create a spawn point. To do this, click on the entity tool on the left hand side and click somewhere in your level. I'm actually going to move the spawn point to the center of the map in the top view. Step 7. Save your map. Hit File, Save As, and call the file something like first map, test map, whatever, as long as you don't put spaces in the name. If you would like spaces in your map's file name, use underscores. Step 8, the final step in life. Run your map. Hit File, Run Map, make sure everything is set to normal, and press Enter. You should see a command prompt appear and quickly disappear. If you see nothing in red, it means you have successfully compiled your map. However, the map isn't actually running. This is because Valve is dumb. No, really, I'm not joking. This is a bug that happens in certain versions of Hammer. To fix this, you actually have to click on Expert and then press Enter. It's a bit weird. Once you've done that, Portal 2 should load up along with your map. Yay! It works! Now while we're here, let's configure some settings for Portal 2 to better suit Hammer. First off, click on Options, Keyboard and Mouse, and enable the Developer Console. The Developer Console is extremely useful for debugging and optimizing levels, and we'll be using it a lot. Next, click on Video, change the display type to windowed mode, and change the resolution to something like 1280 by 720. This is to prevent Hammer from crashing. And there you go. Now you know the very basics of Hammer and the Portal 2 authoring tools. In the next tutorial, we'll be talking about how to add basic puzzle elements to our map. But in the meantime, thank you for watching!
Tohle je Akutechnika. Jedna baterie pro všech 40 strojů.
Hey, welcome to episode 2 of the Portal 2 mapping series. Today we're going to learn how to add basic puzzle elements to our map. I've got a new chair, but you don't really care. Hey, that rhymes. Okay, so before we add the cubes and buttons and stuff, I'm just going to be quickly talking about entities. So an entity is basically a thing, and there are many different types of things, and the reason why this is an entity and not this wall right here is because walls are boring. Now, the entity that Hammer gives you by default is an info player start or a spawn point, and it looks like Gordon Freeman, who has just taken a lethal dose of radiation and his head is not properly attached to his body. Now, we already have a spawn point in our level, so we need to change this. Now, to change this, all you got to do is select the selection tool and double click on it, or press Alt Enter. Now, in the class thing here, it says info player start, and we don't want that. We want, let's say, a cube. So you type in prop weighted cube to change it. And there you go. Now it's currently in the floor, so I'm just going to lift this up. Now it is above the ground, but that doesn't really matter at the moment because this cube does have physics. So it will just fall down when we start the game. Now, another thing we can add is a button. So just select the entity tool, click somewhere in your level, hit the selection tool, double click on it, and then change it to a prop floor button. And there we go. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So we have a button. And the last thing we're going to add in this episode is a door. So you've got a prop test chamber door. Very nice. So let's just move that over here. So basically what we want to do is whenever this button gets pushed, we want this door to open. And the way to do that is by using outputs. Now, an output is basically just a message that an entity sends to another entity. So I guess the message from the button to the door would be,
Oi, Mr. Dicky Door, when young Gordy Green puts the lad cube on top of me, can you open your gob? Thanks.
and then the door's like,
Oh yeah, sure, no problem, mate. I'll just...
Now the good thing about Hammer and the Source Engine is that you don't really need to learn programming. You just got to learn how to use a spreadsheet. So if you don't know anything about Microsoft Excel, then you're probably going to struggle. But it's fine, I will explain everything. Now before we add an output, we need to name this door something. And I'll show you why later. I'm just going to call this door 1. Hit apply to apply it. And then click on the button again. And then click on outputs. Now click on add. And the output we want is on pressed. Now when we press the button, we want to target the door. That's why we renamed the door. And what we want to do is we want to open the door. And there we go. Okay, so let's run our map. Okay, so we have our cube. We place it on the button. And the door opens. However, if we take the cube off the button, the door doesn't shut. And that is obviously a problem. So we're going to change that. Now, if we go onto our outputs here, it says when the button gets pressed, the door will open. However, when the button isn't pressed, the door will have to close, won't it? So what we're going to do, here's a little handy trick. Copy, paste. However, all we got to do is change from on pressed to on unpressed, and then rather than the door opening, we want it to close. Very nice. So if we run our map again, okay, cube, button, door opens. Very nice. Cube off the button, the door shuts. Perfect. Now we got a nice little puzzle going. In the next episode, I don't really know what we're doing, but it's probably going to be something good. So, thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye! Hey, welcome to episode 3 of the Portal 2 mapping series. Today, we're just going to be doing exactly what we did last week. In exactly the same format. Let's go! Okay, so before we add some more puzzle elements to our map, in order to do that, we need to be able to manipulate the geometry of our basic boxy room that we created in the first episode. Now, it's kind of impossible to do that at the moment because, let's say, if I wanted to create a hole in the ceiling, select the selection tool, click on the ceiling, and oh no, it selected the entire room. That's obviously not what we want. Now, the reason why it's doing this is because, remember, this used to be one giant block that we hollowed out. So obviously Hammer will treat that as a giant hollowed out block. It won't necessarily split the floor, the walls and the ceiling into individual brushes. But this isn't actually the correct way of making rooms or levels in Hammer because there's not a lot you can do with hollowed out boxes. So all I want you to do is just select the entire room with the selection tool and press delete on your keyboard. So let's go and recreate this room manually, which is what most mappers do, and it's what I do as well. So first of all, let's just get our wall texture that we used before. Select the block tool, and let's start off by drawing a wall. And I remember it was 256 units high. So let's press enter to create it, and let's do the same on the other side. Now you could do the same thing on the other two sides, but here's a little tip. First of all, hold Control on your keyboard and select the two walls. Control allows you to select multiple objects at once. Then, in the top 2D view, hold Shift and drag out the two walls to another part of your map. Let go of it, and there you go. Hammer has created an exact clone of our two walls. Then move it back to its original location, and while it's selected, click on it again, and the white boxes suddenly change to these 4 black circles. And if you click on one of them and move your mouse around, it will rotate these 2 pieces of geometry right here, these 2 walls. And if we rotate it like so, we've now perfectly aligned it to the other 2 sides. Now, if for whatever reason it's rotating freely and not snapping to the grid, that's probably because you missed something out that I did in the first tutorial, but don't worry, I'll show you how to fix it. So click on Tools, Options, 2D Views, and make sure you click on Default to 15-degree rotations, and you should be good to go. Now for the floor and the ceiling. Now, rather than just using the same texture, I'm going to be slightly interesting and grab a nice floor texture, just so I don't use a wall texture with the floor, because that's kind of weird. So let's just draw out a giant square in the top view, and it was 64 units high. Let's move it below our character and press enter. And using the same trick that we used before, hold shift, drag it upwards, and we have a ceiling. Now, we can't have a floor texture for the ceiling, so let's change it to a ceiling texture. And one thing I forgot to mention, if you want to apply a texture to a current brush, just hit the apply current texture tool, and there you go, you should be good to go. So now we have a room that looks much better than before. We have a much larger variety of textures, and we can select each individual wall, floor, or ceiling. So now we can get into the fun stuff. Yay! So obviously, if you play a Portal 2 map, you'll probably have a portal gun. So to do this, fairly easy, select the entity tool, click somewhere in your level, press Alt Enter, or double click on it, and change it to a weapon underscore portal gun. Hit apply. Now what I like to do is place it directly inside the player, so the player spawns with the portal gun. Now, if we load up the settings here, you don't need to change any of the other settings right here, but here are some settings you can change. So first of all, you can select if you want to create blue portals, yes or no, or orange portals, we'll say red portals. It's obviously not red, it's orange, everyone knows that. You can also select if you want the GLaDOS potato to be on your portal gun. That'd be pretty funny if you did. The starting team, you can have it on single player, or the cooperative mode, Atlas or Peabody mode. But I'm just going to keep everything as default. So save it, run your map, and there we go. We have a portal gun that can shoot both blue and orange portals. We can go through them. It works just the same as usual. And yeah, now another thing you might want to add, or change really for my case, is the different cube types. So in the last video, we just created a simple storage cube, but you know, there are many different types of cubes in Portal 2. So to change the cube that you already have in your level, double click on it, go over here where it says use new skins, change it to yes, because we do want to use the new skins, and then go over here to cube type and change it to whatever you like. I'm going to change it to a companion cube, hit apply, save, run your map. And there we go, we've got a companion cube in our level, and if we pick it up, we got this kind of cool electrical effect from our portal gun, and it should just work all the same. Now, this next puzzle element can get a bit tricky, but I will try to explain it as best as I can. So, you know, if you play a Portal 2 map, and there are cubes in it, there'll more than likely be some cube droppers. Now, to do this, fairly difficult. First of all, you got to delete your cube. Select the entity tool once again, click somewhere in your level, press Alt Enter, and change it to a func underscore instance. Now, a func underscore instance is basically just another word for a prefab. So a prefab is basically like you're grabbing something from somewhere else and you're putting it inside your level. And I'll show you this right now. First of all, change the fix-up name to whatever you like. I'm going to call this box underscore dropper, like so. And the VMF file name, well, this is going to take a while because you've got to type a lot of text in here. So all you got to type in is instances slash gameplay slash cube underscore dropper underscore multiple underscore normal dot VMF. So basically what it's doing is it's going into this file directory, it's grabbing this VMF file, and if you don't know what a VMF file name is, it's basically a map file. It's in the name. This is a map file, and so what it's doing is it's grabbing that map file, putting it in this map, and basically it's hard to explain. Hope I explain it well. So hit apply, and there we go. So if we drag this upwards like so, and there we go, we have a cube dropper. Right now we have a little bit of a problem at the moment because, you know, we need a hole for the cube to drop down into this area, and currently there's a ceiling blocking it. So what we've got to do, I'm going to have to teach you a new tool, and this tool is called the clipping tool. So right now we want to cut that little section of our ceiling. Now, you know, this grid size isn't exactly what I want, so to change the grid size, let's go over here and select these two plus and minus buttons. This button will decrease the grid size and this one will increase it. So I want this to be at a 32 grid size. As you can see, it says snap on grid 32. If I increase it, actually I'm going to use the square brackets. Good handy shortcut. As you can see, on grid 64, on grid 32, on grid 16, goes up to, I believe it goes up to 512. And there we go. What I'm going to do with the clipping tool selected is draw out a line like so. Now this red part will be deleted and this part will be preserved. And if we click it again, it will flip those two sides. So this part will be deleted and this part will be kept. And if we click on it again, both parts will be kept. If you press enter, it will split this ceiling into two individual parts. Now, select the clipping tool again and draw another line. Press enter and do this again, like so. Press enter and we want this part. And for this final part, I'm actually gonna destroy this part. So, like so, make sure it's highlighted in red. Press enter. And there we go, we've created a little hole for our cube to fall down in. Now I would like this to be circular, but doing circular holes is a bit difficult in Hammer, so a square hole should be just fine. Now one thing you might want to do is have a button so you can activate this dropper. So select the entity tool, press somewhere in your level, press Alt Enter, change it to a prop underscore button. And we're going to use the output tab again. So all you got to do is click on outputs, and what we're going to do is click on add, click on pressed. We want to select our box dropper that we named, and we want this to trigger. This means that when the button is pressed, the box dropper will trigger its opening animation and it should drop the cube. If we already had a cube in our room, that's already been given to us. If we press the button again, it should dissolve that cube and put it back in its original spawn point. Now to do that, copy and paste it and change it to enable. So there we go. Let's save our map, run it, and oh, everything's a bit dark. Now I know. Now if everything looks dark at the moment, that's because we actually have a light entity in our level, and we'll get to light entities in another tutorial. But to fix this problem, go into the developer console by pressing the key underneath escape and type in mapped underscore Fulbright 1. And there we go, we're back to where we were before with no lighting. So if we press this button, the dropper should activate the cube, and if we place it on the button, the door should open. However, if we press the button again, the cube should dissolve and give us another one. In fact, if you head over to the Valve developer community, there's many different types of cube droppers you can have. You can have one that spawns companion cubes. You can have ones that spawn antique cubes from the Cave Johnson era, or you can have droppers that don't even drop cubes. They can drop like different gels and things like that. So the link will be in the description below. Now another Funk instance you can create in your level is a fizzler or an emancipation grill, whatever you want to call it. So select the entity tool, click somewhere in your level, press Alt Enter or double click on it and change it to once again a Funk underscore instance. Hit apply. The fix up name, we don't really need to call this anything, but do you know what, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call this fizzler underscore grid. Hit apply. Now the VMF file name, once again, it's a long one. So you go to instances /gameplay /fizzler _ and this can be black or white. So I'm going to select this to black and then underscore, and this can be clean or dirty. I'm going to set it to clean. What did I do? Oh no. Underscore black underscore clean. This can be clean or dirty, and 128 by 128.vmf. Hit apply, and lots of crazy stuff should happen, and you should get an emancipation grill. And if we run our map, let's say if we create some portals right here and walk through our emancipation grill, it should refresh our portal gun. And let's grab a cube real quick, and if we throw this through the emancipation grill, it should dissolve. Oh, that was pretty cool. But yeah, it works just like a regular fizzler. Now the last thing we're going to add in this tutorial is a laser shooter and a laser catcher, because they're fairly common in Portal 2. So to do this, select the entity tool once again, click somewhere in your level, press Alt Enter, and change it to a ENV Portal Laser. Hit apply. So I'm going to move it to here and move it upwards. I'm actually going to adjust the grid size so it fits perfectly on our floor, and decrease it again so it's flush with our wall. And there's some Z fighting, so we're going to use the clipping tool once again, and let's draw out some lines. Sorry, I'm going a bit quickly here, but that's what happens when you're super good at the clipping tool. No, I'm not that great. And let's move this backwards. And there's a leak in our level so far, so we can't have anything exposed to this void, otherwise that will be a leak and our map won't compile. We'll get to leaks in another tutorial, but to solve this problem, just for now, let's drag our floor so it fills that hole for us. And obviously, what we need to do is create a laser catcher. So let's create another entity and change it to a prop laser catcher. And let's move that over here. Now one more thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add another cube. Allow new skins, yes. Change it to a reflective cube. And it's in the ground, so obviously we need to lift this up a little bit. And while we're here, let's just rotate the player so it can face the door. So the player should start facing actual things rather than facing a completely different direction. Actually, last thing I'm going to do in this tutorial is double click on this laser catcher. And we want, when we activate this laser catcher, we want to open that door, so click on add. On powered, we want to open the door, so door open, copy, paste, and on unpowered, we want the door to close, and there we go. Now, if we run our map for the very last time, first of all, let's fix the lighting problem. And there we have a laser, so if you shoot a portal here, and shoot a portal there, there we go, we've activated the laser catcher and the door should open. And also this should work, you know, if we grab our cube, should work just the same. Ow, ow,
technician that's ever lived. The greatest 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 technician. The greatest technician that's ever lived. Technician that's ever lived. The greatest technician that's ever lived. The greatest. The greatest.